Hi, I'm Colleen McElduff. I'm currently studying education at Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and I recently attended a youth mental health first aid training at a local school district's professional development day.
I'm Terrence Rodgers. I work for Finger Lakes Community Schools. I have a background in human services, and recently I've had an opportunity to take the youth mental health first aid training with Joe. We've had an opportunity to talk about our experiences.
We had a great conversation.
Let me first ask, I'll start with Colleen, why did you decide to take part in the youth mental health first aid training?
So I took the training because I'm in a class right now for my master's program in education, where we're looking at how local schools take advantage of certain programs in the community to help certain challenges that their students might be facing. So me and one of my friends are looking at mental health and how schools are helping their students manage their mental health challenges. And another reason that I was interested in taking the training was because I plan on being a teacher next year, and I think having this background going into that first year could help me a lot.
And one of the things I'd like people to really know is that youth mental health first aid is not just for educators. It's for any person who regularly interacts with youth. And so could you give us some perspective on your experience and why you took it?
Sure, and thank you. First, I took it was because of personal reasons. I grew up in a challenging background, and I would say I had my own personal struggles with mental health. And I didn't know where or how to get help. I didn't know if there were any resources available, and I don't think they are to the extent that they are now. I think it's becoming mental health, and that whole area is becoming more acknowledged. And so I took the training because, like you just mentioned, I do work with youth in our community. I'm involved with Suicide Prevention Coalition, Substance Abuse Coalition. So I did it just because it was a passion, it was available. I had the opportunity to take your training, and it was exactly what I felt like I needed in order to help the youth in our community.
I wonder if you, after completing the training, what, if any, takeaways you had? Was there a moment where you said, well, that's what that was worth, or here's the value in it? Anything that you took as a takeaway from the training?
Yes, several things actually. First of all, I didn't even know. I thought I knew because I had worked with youth before over the last several years, but I did not know just the basics. I assumed that there were certain things that you do if you saw somebody struggling. I just thought, because of my own personal experiences, I thought I knew how to approach them. But during the training, I learned some do's and don'ts, some basic do's and don'ts, like don't assume anything. Don't escalate the situation, listen, and then one of the key points is that I'm not a therapist. That's not my role. I'm just in the first line of defense, if you will, to help people that, young people that I see that may be struggling.
Yeah, thank you for offering that perspective. And that's something that we're going to reiterate a couple of times today, is we're going to reiterate the concept that even though it has the name of mental health first aid, this is not meant to make someone a therapist or a certified counselor.
Yes.
Colleen, what would you say was a takeaway that you had from the training?
I would say the biggest takeaway that I got was the fact that you are not certified to really help in the situation. I think that they kept really hitting that home, but you can also do so much even with not having that training and that title, I guess. Just noticing small things when it's still a non-crisis situation, I think, is really the key. And I think that that's something very valuable going forward, when you interact with any youth.
Thank you for offering that feedback. I think another piece to this puzzle is discussing that mental health first aid is really based upon action steps or tools that adults can use to help young people. And in particular, they use the acronym ALGEE, A-L-G-E-E. And ALGEE represents a series of steps that the provider can take to be of assistance. The first of those is the A, which is representative of three things: approach, assess, and assist. Now, in terms of approach, what we're really talking about is how do we have that conversation with a young person while still allowing them to be receptive and not making them defensive or upset. Assess is us determining, is this a crisis or not a crisis, but a concern? And assist, how do we understand what the young person needs and start to think about how we can support them? So I was wondering, Colleen, if you had any feedback on the A and how you have interpreted how you might use that action step.
So the most important thing that I got from it was that you assess the situation in a lot of different ways, and one of them being like you notice how behaviors have changed over time. So if a child stops hanging out with the same friends or participating in the same activity, that might be a sign, and you might go to that child in a way that's just telling them what you've noticed. I think we talked about using I statements, like I've noticed that you aren't doing whatever activity. Could you tell me more about that, or why is this happening? As opposed to coming at them and being like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that?
And I think that's a really important takeaway from the work, is this idea that you're creating an environment that allows for help. Because if it comes across as too forceful, you put the young person in a place where they might not be ready to hear what you have to offer. So those I statements can be very powerful. Thank you for that. Terrence, any thoughts you have about the A action step?
Yeah, and I like how you broke down the three different A's because they are, intertwined. So for me, I think assess. For me, I would assess the person's, like Colleen alluded to, the person's behavior. And I think she was talking more about behavior changes over time. But I was thinking in terms of a situation that's happening in the moment. So then I would have to assess, just use my my instincts and my training to see what level of need this person might have. And then, of course, not approach them in an aggressive way. Maybe try to de-escalate. Move towards them already trying to diffuse the situation a little, or de-escalate the situation, which might require asking them to leave with me and go somewhere else if there's other people around, to kind of limit the potential for violence or some other triggering someone else. And then I would reach into the toolkit that I learned from Youth Mental Health First Aid to try to assist them. At first I would just listen, and then, intently, and letting them know that I do care. And then based upon what they tell me, then I would take the next steps. Is there is this something that this person, this young person needs just to vent? Is it a situation involving another youth on site? Is it bullying? Is it a crisis at home? Does this person have potential suicidal ideation? And so based upon those assessments, then I can take the necessary steps to try to get that person the help that they may need.
And you mentioned something that I think is important for us to reiterate, and it's that these steps aren't always in order. They can happen in different orders at different times depending on need. It is not meant to be done in lockstep.
Right.
And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is a good segue is the concept of listening. And in the LG acronym, the L represents listen non-judgmentally. Yes. And so I would guess that may come across differently to different people. So I was wondering, as you took the training and as you've used the training since, what does listen non-judgmentally translate to for you?
Yeah, so that was a great question, Joe, and thank you. So as far as listening, I think one of the things that I would try to consider is looking at the youth in crisis from a holistic perspective. As we know, there's cultural considerations, socioeconomics, different family backgrounds, different circumstances. And so I'm looking at this person and I'm hearing what they're saying, but I'm also paying attention to those other things that I just mentioned, and non-judgmentally, because who am I? First of all, who am I to judge anyone's background? Just because it might be different from mine, it doesn't mean that mine is right and theirs is wrong, or that I have it's not my place to judge them or what their circumstances are what their circumstances are. My role as a youth mental health first aider is to listen to what they're saying to me, and as I'm listening, I'm also paying attention to body language, and I'm really trying to hear what they're saying to me. Like, even if they're not saying directly, I have, suicidal ideation. I'm listening for words, or I'm listening to the severity of their crisis at the time. So I'm trying to look at the person from a holistic perspective, leaving mines out, leaving my ideas or my beliefs or my personal preferences that has nothing to do with me engaging and trying to help this young person that may be in crisis.
And I appreciate you offering that perspective because of your current role in the community as someone who serves as a job coach and a mentor for people. Mm-hmm. That's a unique perspective. And I think I want to come off of that to Colleen and ask, from your perspective as a current student in a graduate program, but also someone who has experience as a student teacher and someone who has been trained in education, what does that concept of listen non-judgmentally mean to you?
I agree with a lot of what you said, Terrence. Mm-hmm. I think the other piece of it that I took away from it was that you also shouldn't take that time to advise the student or child about what they should do next. I think that you need to take that time to really just provide a space where they can vent and talk about their experiences, and you listen non-judgmentally, as you said, and then later on you can find ways to provide help and advice if they want it or need it. But I think that the key right there is to just let them speak what they want to talk about.
And that is an excellent segue to the G in the acronym, and that is give reassurance and information. And the important part about giving reassurance and information is, did you hear what was said? And then did you plan accordingly? Do you know where you're going? And so, Colleen, I guess the question I would ask you in that regard is, what are some examples that you could see possibly in a classroom setting where you would need to give a young person reassurance?
I think that the most helpful reassurance you could give someone would be to remind them that it's temporary, whatever they're feeling. That was a big thing that we talked about in our training. And it validates that what they're feeling is tough and that it's hard, but it's temporary, and there's ways that you can get around it. You won't be feeling like this forever. And I think that that's a way that you can provide hope, but not give answers, because it's not something that can be solved with just one quick answer.
And there's really two words in there that you mentioned that I want to highlight here. One is validation. Validation is a critical part of building any relationship, of course.
Right.
But in youth mental health first aid, these steps go much more smoothly if you are in the process of validating what that young person is feeling. So that's really important. And ultimately, what are we trying to offer from these steps? It's hope.
Yes.
So those are the things that I think you did a nice job of highlighting, those two in particular. Terrence, I would ask from your perspective, there's so much information out there. And you've already mentioned that one of the struggles you had as a young person was knowing, where is it available? How do I get to it?
Right.
In your estimation, how do these steps help get to that G of giving information to a young person?
Well, first of all, I really appreciated how you answered the last question for the G, because if you were going to ask me that, I was going to be like, what she said. That was great. So as far as giving information, I would draw on my own personal adversity and what I've learned, in human services and being affiliated with the organizations in our community. We have a list of community resources that are available. And so what I would do is, based upon what I'm hearing, I would offer the appropriate services that I think that would help the person in their particular situation.
I appreciate you offering that, and giving that personal touch to this work, of course, brings it to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not something that we're doing just to walk through a series of steps or part of a clinical experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's actual human relationships.
That's right.
I will mention, in terms of information, we are very fortunate in the Finger Lakes region to have a robust 211.
Mm-hmm.
So whether people want to call the number 211 or go on the 211 website, there is a very strong overlap between what is available in local communities and what you can find by searching on 211 for information. So that's an excellent opportunity. The last two letters in the LG acronym are E, and the first E of that acronym is to encourage professional support. And that can mean different things to different young people that may need it.
Right.
And the course tries to lay out a number of the different opportunities that might exist. Terrence, I'll start with you this time. The question I would ask you is, do you think that stigma has an issue with getting young people to accept professional support?
Absolutely. And again, I'll draw on my own personal experience. I can remember struggling with depression, and there was some trauma stuff that happened in my childhood. And I would get together with my friends, and a lot of them had similar situations going on at home or just in our community. And we didn't hang out and talk about, hey man, I'm feeling kind of down, I'm a little depressed or whatever, because it was risky to do that, because you could be perceived as a punk or soft, or they just like and then I think sometimes it would make them feel like, well, I'm not going to engage you in that kind of a conversation because maybe I'm feeling the same kind of way. So instead, I wouldn't even feel comfortable, or even consider, opening up in that way with my peers at that time. However, now I think the situation has changed a little bit because of, as we mentioned before, people are more aware of and more in tune of, mental health crisis from all age groups, and it's becoming more, I guess, socially acceptable now. And so, I don't know, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction as far as people being willing to open up about their own personal struggles. I do still think that there's some stigma attached to it because people just really don't understand, mental health struggles. It's not that I'm crazy or that I'm psycho. It really saying that is that I'm hurting and I'm having feelings and emotions that I don't know what to do with. And so, and where do I go and how do I get help? So I think the good news is that I think we're moving in a direction of vulnerability and a little bit of self-disclosure. And I think that can be contagious in a way, just like bad behaviors can be contagious. Like if I'm hanging around with kids that are, vaping or getting high, smoking weed or drinking, then, the odds are I'm probably going to do that. If I'm hanging out with some friends that are more into, the creative arts or athletics, then that's probably what we're going to be doing. But if I'm in an arena and I have a few people or one person that I feel like I can be my authentic self with and be vulnerable with, then I'm more likely to open up, and they probably will too. And I just think there's power in that. And I just hope with the youth mental health first aid training, I think we can be an avenue. Like if we reach one person, they might, talk to their peers or one of their friends about it. Like, hey, I talked to this guy and he told me some things and he helped me out a little bit and he gave me this information. And so I think that could spread in a positive way as well.
And so with that perspective, Colleen, I'd like to ask you, You're the one who has attended college most recently. Terrence and I are a few years removed from college. I'm wondering if you have a perspective from that lens of what are you seeing in terms of availability of mental health supports in school, and where you think that might be able to improve.
I actually think that the mental health resources that my friends, both at the college that I went to and my friends from home that went to other colleges, have been very positive, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I know a lot of my friends have taken advantage of like therapists that you can schedule for free through campus, and you can meet with them weekly, or you can meet with them just for a certain event that came up. So I personally think that people have, or there are more resources available than I was expecting. But I do think there is still a little bit of stigma with it.
The final E in the acronym is to encourage other supports. And that's a little vague, and it's purposely vague, because every community, every family, and every person has other things that may support them that work for them as individuals, but might not necessarily work for everybody.
Right.
So I'm wondering, from your perspective, and we'll start with Colleen this time, are there things that you would say in the community you live in now that you would recommend as an additional support? And what I mean by that is things that are associated with clubs or churches or other organizations or teams that you think would help a young person feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
I think it is very important to be a part of some sort of community, especially in school. When I was in high school and middle school, I was on a swim team, and it was just a huge group. It was boys and girls. There was like 70 people, and it was one of the best experiences that I did. And I looked forward to it. We only had a winter season, but I looked forward to it all year. And I was friends with these kids all year round, and it was nice to just have some group that you belong to, and whether that is sports or the arts or some sort of club, they're at every school, and I think it's really important that students take advantage of them, just because you can build friendships and further your passions and your interests.
I appreciate that. And Terrence, from your lived experience, I would ask, what supports were helpful to you as you worked your way through your childhood? And then what supports do you wish you would have had access to that you didn't?
As far as really feeling supported with my mental health and personal challenges at home, I it's really kind of sad to say that it wasn't there, and that led to some choices that I made to try to anesthetize or to cope with the feelings that I was having inside, and of course, some of those things can lead us down a path that is really difficult to come out of. However, from that adversity and from those experiences, eventually I found some self-help and some support groups, which I encourage now. Like for instance, in our community, we have the Suicide Prevention Coalition, the Substance Abuse Coalition. There's all kinds of self-help groups from Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I mean, for any kind of disorder, any kind of struggle you have, even if it's online, there's other people that are struggling with those similar issues. One of the things that we've been talking about in our community that we were considering developing, and I think they may exist already on some level, is grief and loss support groups. Because a lot of us, be it from a rural area, the suburbs, or from the city, all of us can identify with grief and loss or pain in some way. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's family has been hit by something, especially over the last, decade or so.
So I really think that's a really good summary, and allows us to get to another question that is on my mind today, is if I'm someone watching this video and I'm wondering, why should I take mental health first aid? What is the value in it? Colleen, what would you say to that question?
I think that we all interact with youth, even if you're not just a teacher or someone that like physically works with youth every day. We all have family members or friends, and if you could be one adult that they can connect with and they can look to you for help and to be the person that points them in the direction of resources, I think it's important to have the knowledge before someone comes to you with, or when the problem, can't be solved.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Terrence, same question. What value do you think someone would find in taking youth mental health first aid?
The youth belong in a way to all of us. It's not our obligation to fix everyone's problems, so there has to be a balance with that. However, if the youth are our future, and so if our youth are hurting and struggling and it's obvious, then it's part of my responsibility to help out in the ways that I can. And one of the ways that gives me the ability to do that is take the youth mental health first aid, so I can know how to do that. I can't just jump into something and not know how to go about it. And as I said before, there's times that I've tried to help people in the past, and maybe they felt maybe I was stepping over their boundaries, or maybe my approach was wrong. Maybe they felt like I was being, aggressive or demanding in a way. And so when taking the youth mental health first aid, it takes me through those steps, and it allows me to assess and how to approach, and then link to other services. Because as we mentioned before, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm just another human being trying to relate and help one of our young people that's a part of our village. And so I just think anyone from any age group, any adult, can be a vessel to helping young people who may be struggling.
Terrence and Colleen, thank you so much for being here today. It is really critical that we have conversations like this so that this good work can continue and move forward and support those who are in need, both in a crisis and non-crisis situations. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate your insights, your perspectives, your sharing of your story, and thank you for the work you're doing in your respective communities.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to have taken the training. It was very helpful to me.
Yeah, and I'd just like to thank you personally for how you've impacted my ability to serve people in our community. I've had an opportunity to take a few trainings that was offered from your organization and who you represent, but the youth mental health first aid, it really touched me, and I just feel like it's really equipped me to be in a position to help young people who might be struggling in some way. So thank you.
Thank you. If you're interested in learning more about the training that Colleen and Terrence were speaking about, I would suggest that you check it out on mentalhealthfirstaid.org. There is the availability to take youth mental health first aid, adult mental health first aid, as well as teen mental health first aid. Those courses are available in multiple formats, including an online component, an in-person component, or a fully virtual component. I would also suggest to you that you keep in mind that if you are faced with an emergency, to dial 911, and if you have concerns regarding someone's mental health state, or if you are concerned about suicide, that you call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 988. Thank you.